Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third episode of The Car of Pit. I'm here with Dion from the Netherlands. He will tell us in a couple minutes more about his story, where he comes from. And, well, Dion, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm very happy that I could be here. And I'm very happy that we could also be here in the heart of my city. So.
Good, good. So, Dion, let's begin with the beginning.
Well, I was born and raised in Maastricht. I've only left for 2 years to live in Den Bosch.
Okay.
I've never really traveled outside of Europe. And actually, my whole life story is confined to this beautiful city. So.
Okay.
Given that it is about conversion, I ended up converting here, which I think is quite an honor because it has a very long, very rich history, specifically around faith, around pilgrimage, and also around Mary. And before that, I basically lived a life of atheism here, one very disconnected from God. And sadly, Maastricht also offers a lot to the modern hedonist, if I can say it like that. Yeah.
So, would you like to begin with, I don't know, your upbringing? What was your relationship like with maybe some God figure, some relation with religion? Was there any? I don't know. How was like your upbringing?
So, I come from a divorced household.
Okay.
I have to say that my parents are on good terms, so they can speak with each other as friends. My mom and my dad have very little to nothing with the Catholic Church. The most my mom does is when she walks to a chapel for Mary, she burns a candle. My dad has a past. He used to be an acolyte, but he quit doing that. The only member in my family that consistently went to church was my grandfather on my mother's side.
Okay.
My whole family now is kind of saying like, no, he wasn't really that Christian, this and that. But every Sunday he went, and every Sunday he prayed, and he took it very seriously. And what I've understood from a lot of family stories, my grandfather would always pray to Saint Anthony. Always, that was his go-to saint. He would also, there are a lot of stories that I can tell about him. He would often curse a lot, and then he would curse and say, Saint Anthony, please, I beg of you. And then he often, mostly when he lost something, he would get it. A lot of stories about that. To go back to my upbringing, parents divorced when I was 4.
Okay.
I went to a Catholic elementary, but
Does that even exist in the Netherlands?
it does exist, but only in name.
Okay.
Only in name. I did my communion, but more because of cultural reasons, not because of religious reasons. And I didn't do my confirmation. I'm going to do that the coming Sunday, like 2 days from now. I'm going to be confirmed.
Lovely. Congratulations.
And I think in elementary I became very atheist, so I didn't believe anything at all. So after my communion, my priest basically walked up to me and he asked like, so you believe in God? And I kind of answered like, no, I believe in dinosaurs.
Oh my God.
So I was 10 years old, and that was my answer to him. And from that point onward, I believed in what you would say science, and I made myself very atheist. I had a lot of criticisms against the Catholic Church and against religion in general. And that stayed that way up until my teenage years. And I think somewhere in my teenage years, I ended up being very interested in paranormal.
Okay.
And I also had certain encounters, and from that point onward, religion became a thing. I went through a couple of phases where I basically started a bit out as New Age.
Okay.
So I think around the age of 16, 17. And it naturally grew into an interest for Buddhism. most likely meditation. And I was very interested in the concept of nirvana, which you have to understand this comes from the teenage mind. So I never was really invested in Buddhist doctrine. I was only invested in the practice of meditation
Okay.
and the philosophy around that. But I do adhere to, for me, there was some truth in what Confucius said, and there was some truth in what Buddha said on a spiritual aspect. And that naturally, somewhere down the line, I got interest for other religions. I had a very much hate-love relationship with the religion of Islam for a while.
Okay.
So I would practice things, and at the same thing, I would criticize it. I was interested in Judaism. I had also some interests at that point in our pagan traditions.
Okay.
So I've studied that superficial because at that point I was also very, I came out of this atheist thinking, okay, there is no spiritual world, to me accepting, okay, there is the spiritual world. But what is the spiritual world truly made from? Like, is there a hierarchy? Are there higher beings that are only findable in that realm? How do we interact with these beings? Like, all these questions came about. I gravitated towards, for me, there needed to be, a truth in all religions at that point in time. Yet, I also had this very strong instinct that at least one religion needed to have the most truth.
Okay. Interesting.
And I never fought Christianity because I still, at that point, I just hated Christianity. I hated the religion. And it stayed that way up until I was, I think 20 or 20, 21. 21. I was 21.
Can you tell a little bit more about the reasons why you hated it?
Um, well, historically, when it comes to history, I'm very interested in the subject, and for the last 15 years, I've studied it. Like with a passion, so in my free time, I would basically look on the internet and, read entire wiki articles. And from those wikis, I would look for books, or I would look for podcasts or videos on YouTube. And from there, I would look at ground sources. So I was interested in the Crusades. I would read Rune Simon, and after Rune Simon, I would basically look at the actual Gesta Francorum. So to give an example.
Okay.
But through that interest, I got a very big vendetta against the Catholic Church. For me, it was anti-science.
Okay.
Well, not only the Catholic Church, but like all the Christians. I had the same view for Protestants, but I viewed Protestants at the time a lot more positive than I viewed Catholics.
Okay.
They were anti-science. They limited freedoms. Basically the whole, liberal narrative around Christianity. I did ascribe to that a lot. So for me, there were all these zealots that for a God they couldn't prove existed, hindered science, hindered freedoms, overall dragged society into unnecessary wars. I blamed a lot of wars on religion. A lot of aspects, specifically Catholicism, I called superstitious. All the stories about all these saints, they could not be true. So, or Mary praying for you in heaven, weird way of thinking. It's also that school really instilled it into me. If I'm going to look back at my time at elementary, but also at secondary, a lot of stories I can remember the Inquisition. So I'm from the Netherlands, and Spain during the 80 Years' War, has its good and its bads here. But the Netherlands often wants to remember its bads because we're a Protestant nation. And the Protestant Reformation became a big catalyst for why we're an independent nation now. And the Catholic Church didn't need to be an adversary with its own interest. It needed to be evil. And there's still, so when we remember and look back at the Inquisition, give an example, we look back at how the Inquisition eventually condemned tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Dutchmen to death in through torture and so forth. And then the same stories, about what Spain was doing to the Jews and the Muslims. And only recently I've been delving into it, and then most of that isn't true. It's mostly coming from generation upon generation of people basically, yeah, as it's called, printed lies are libel, creating a bunch of libel. So a few deaths become many deaths, and also things that are not associated with the Inquisition at all become part of the Inquisition. So we had in Brussels, when the whole Protestant Reformation came into the Netherlands, the Habsburgs, if I'm correct, I don't know for sure, but I think it was the Habsburgs came with what is called the Raad van Beroerte in Dutch. And they would be so big Protestant proselytizers. They would eventually be arrested. They would be tried and then sometimes tortured there. Some condemned to death. But this was done by secular authorities. This wasn't done. This wasn't done at all by the Catholic Church. But in my history books, it is still falsely attributed to the Catholic Church and to the Inquisition. But that is not true. And this is the same what you also see later on when it comes to the Spanish. The Spanish ended up killing left, right, and center Protestants, which is not actually true. So if you're going to look, for example, the siege of Antwerp, I think the second one, because the first one happened, you had the Spanish Fury. Well, these weren't some pious, secular trained soldiers. These were mercenaries, so soldiers of fortune. And the Spanish army couldn't pay them anymore. So the first time around, they sacked all of Antwerp, killing everyone, including Catholics, Protestants, didn't matter. They just wanted their money. They just wanted their due. And it became known as the Spanish Fury. And throughout the rest of the Netherlands, that became the reason to revolt even more. But again, that is mercenaries. That's not the Catholic Church. That's not Spain even. That's just mercenaries that Spain couldn't pay. And these mercenaries decided to do that. Then then Antwerp got besieged by Spain, second time. And all the Calvinists basically got to hear after a treaty, no worries, the troops will let you leave to Amsterdam. With all your belongings, with all your money, you can just pick up your stuff and go. Which was by most of the Catholics in the South who were at that time actually with us in the rebellion for identity reasons, was seen as a very noble gesture. And it's also one of the reasons that Amsterdam could have eventually its golden age and grew to prominence because of these Calvinists. So they left. And for me, that story shows to me, okay, if the Catholic Church is so bad, why would they let a bunch of Calvinists leave? If they're only motivated by religious zeal, why would they let heretics leave? And this is just a deep dive into one story. And I had that with a lot of stories that I was investigating. It's like, okay, the Catholic Church gets accused of a lot of crimes that in the end aren't true. Many Catholic monarchies get accused of a lot of crimes that are taken heavily out of context and are exaggerated. And I think to come with these, like I would first hear the Raad van Beroerte is the Inquisition. I would first hear about the Spanish Fury and solely the Spanish Fury, and that's why the Spanish are bad. I heard about how Amsterdam grew to prominence because of Calvinists, but I never heard the story that it was because Spanish allowed them to leave from Antwerp. And all these things, so you had one side of the story, and I got the second one much, much later. And I think that one side, when I only heard that one side, I ended up hating the Catholic Church. Because it was like, they're all a bunch of zealots, and they cause chaos and mayhem wherever they go. And when I heard the second part, which ironically I mostly heard after my conversion, it puts a lot of things into perspective. And I always have to think back about what Fulton Sheen said, Venerable Fulton Sheen. He said, a lot of people hate what people think the Catholic Church is. Very few people hate what the Catholic Church actually is. And that was the same for me. I assumed that the Catholic Church was something. I assumed also all these people that were associated with it were something, and it turned out to be something completely different. And I think, that's the crux of it.
Okay. And then you also mentioned about your interest in the paranormal.
Yes.
Like, what exactly would you consider?
I had some paranormal encounters in my life.
Okay.
I have to say I had more paranormal encounters when I actually came closer to the Catholic faith. One story that always sticks with me, as one of the first times that was really, really fascinating, is I had a friend of mine. He's very atheist, even up to this day. He was part of a neighborhood watch,
Okay.
and he eventually ended up getting a new job. And because of that new job, he needed to, he had this very distinct T-shirt, and he needed to bring that T-shirt back. The guy lived, so the boss of the neighborhood watch lived in this apartment building. And it basically goes very simple. So the first floor is A, the second level is B, the third C, the fourth D. And he was living at 52B. And my friend basically needed to bring back the T-shirt, but he needed to put it through the mail in the mailbox. And he put it in 52D.
Okay.
I was with him when he was returning it. So eventually we walk, and the boss of the neighborhood watch, is sitting at its balcony, and he's smoking a cigarette, and he has a talk with my friend. And eventually, somewhere down the line, in that talk, he makes very clear that he threw it in 52D.
Okay.
To which the boss replies, "You moron, I live at 52B, yada, yada, yada." I'm very happy. So I walk back with him. We ring the doorbell of 52D. Someone picks up. He explains it, and eventually you hear the buzzer, and we can enter the big hallway. So if you're going to look in the flat systems here in the Netherlands, what happens is all these apartment buildings have a phone. You have to get the phone on a horn. You have to press then a buzzer. So on the phone you can hear who's standing outside, and with the buzzer you can open the hallway door.
Yeah.
Then you have to stand in the hallway, or you can even go up to the address, and then you have a doorbell on the inside. But regardless, someone picks up, and the only thing that I understood was that he needed to wait in the hallway, that he was coming down. Because that's where the mailbox is. You have a little key to open the mailbox. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and my friend ended up waiting there, like, I think 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, eventually 5, 6 minutes. And he looked at me through, because so it's a glass hallway, glass door, and he looked at me. It's like,
Only he entered.
only he entered. I stayed outside. So eventually he goes up, and he basically quickly texted me, "I'm going to my old boss." Then Dion's little side quest. So I was standing outside, and I eventually opened up the entrance of the mailbox, and I could see, if I could extend my fingers long enough, I could grab it. So eventually I did. So that's how we recovered the T-shirt.
So the guy never came.
The guy never came.
That answered. Okay.
So he goes to his boss, and he goes with his boss eventually up to 52D. And I wait a few minutes with the T-shirt, very happy, not necessary anymore. And at a certain point, what's also I saw the boss of the neighborhood watch, and he was like pale like a ghost. Pale like a ghost.
The guy or your friend?
No, the boss, the guy, pale as a ghost. And he looks at me, and like, even, full pride, I give him the T-shirt, and he's like, with a face like really thank you, and then just wandered off. And my friend walks outside with me. It's like, okay, at least that ordeal is fixed. I'm like, why did nobody open? And he looks at me and he says, "Oh, the house was rented out for months. Nobody was living there." So I kind of got goosebumps there at the spot as well. So
Oh my God.
always stuck with me. Always stuck with me. Till this day, I notice that the apartment, because it's basically, if my street where I live, and it's basically, there's this big apartment building, it's like that apartment building. And I noticed that the house is going up and on for rent ever since that story, which is...
So it has not been rented.
It has been rented, and it's rented for a few months, and then the guy leaves. And then whoever lives there leaves again. It's rented for a few months. Someone comes in it,
So it's like haunted.
probably.
Oh my God. Okay.
So yeah, that's... And then I was spiritual, but not yet Catholic, but I always stuck with me. It was one of the scariest things I ever encountered.
Yeah.
Because I didn't hear what the guy was saying, not all of it. It was on the phone, but I did hear someone distinctly on that phone. Not only that, I always wondered, like, It's an empty house, but whatever is in there is powerful enough to actually pick the phone from the horn,
An answer.
answer, and push in the button. That's crazy.
Oh my god.
That's crazy.
Maybe it's a soul, a purgatory soul that needs a lot of prayers.
He said it's probably a squatter. I'm like, it's at the fourth floor and you can't enter it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It has no other balconies, and the only entrance why he could enter is basically either the door, which, you know, had a glass in it that needs to be hid open,
Yeah.
or the kitchen windows that need to be open. Else it's at the fourth floor and
Like simply climb.
you cannot simply climb towards it.
And I don't think a squatter will answer. Yeah, yeah, I'm going. That doesn't sound logical.
So no, I literally overthought it, but that's still if I have this story with my friend, he's always, I think it's a squatter. I'm like,
I don't think it is.
I don't think it's a squatter. No, no, no.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the. I have a few, because that's not the scariest one. Scariest one.
Okay.
Scariest one that I have.
This podcast is gonna be so full of things like story, like history, lessons, but also this. It's gonna be hilarious.
So this is actually a year ago. It's like now it's May. So this happened last year, May. So this is pretty recent. This is generally the scariest story that I have. And I'm gonna tell every part of it. So I had a friend. I've studied for 2 years. I recently had to quit the study, sadly. Studied to become a history teacher. In my country, on HBO level. So it's basically professional college to actually, you know, directly put what you want to become in practice. I made a friend who not gonna name, of course, but very decent, very good friend of mine. I still consider him a good friend. I want to say it's not that he as a person, there's anything wrong with him. He's a very good guy. Still have a lot of respect for him. Helped me out a lot of times. So, but his house is definitely haunted. Like 100% his house is haunted. So what it was, I was living with my sister, and let's say things didn't work out, and I needed a place to stay. So I crashed with him for a week to basically be stress-free. I could also, because I had at that point a chronic sleeping shortage,
Okay.
and he wanted to help me out. It's like, then I can cook, I can clean for you. You know, you have a place to stay. You can focus on your school. And I thought to myself, man is helping me out. I can only be thankful for it.
He was living by his own.
On his own.
Yeah.
But he was living in a village near Sittard.
Okay. Okay.
So was the Wednesday evening or the Thursday evening. I'm still, at least a Wednesday evening or Thursday evening. I was going for the late train. So I was going for the last train at 2:10.
Okay.
I had a stop train, and then I would be in Sittard in 22:30, and I could take the last bus at 22:46 or 47. And I could basically use the last bus to get into that village and get at his place. A Thursday evening, before or Wednesday or Thursday evening when I wanted to go, I get off the bus with my stuff, and I am like, this feeling of dread just falling over me. Like absolute dread out of nowhere. I was scared for my life, and I didn't know why. So I thought to myself, I'm probably hungry. So
Good answer.
So for the people who ever come to Maastricht, in front of the station you have Musti, which is a kebab place, very famous.
Very good.
I thought to myself, I'm gonna get food there, so made some commercial for Musti kebab. So I was getting Musti, which is what we also say in Maastricht. Had a kebab. The feeling was gone, and then I climbed up the stairs of the station
Yeah.
to get to the first platform, and I was
But
like,
it's super shady, that part. Like that pathway is super scary.
I know. It's not, well, I was again because I walked through it hundreds of times. So, but again, like the feeling of dread. And the closer I got to my the platform, the more the dread was. So I was sitting there like a few minutes before the train would be coming. I was like, dear Lord, if you want me to go, then give me a sign. And at that point, I just heard from the intercom that my train was canceled. Right after I did that prayer, I was like, boom, canceled. So, in all happiness, I called my friend, which is really terrible that I was happy, but the feeling at that point was gone. But I called him, and I was like, I cannot come. Train is cancelled. Like, no worries. You can take the speed train, the intercity as we call it. So it goes from Maastricht directly to Sittard. It skips all these little places in between. And then in 15 minutes, so at 45, I would be at the station. But I have not enough time to get to the bus. But he was like, I will take the bus there. And ask the bus chauffeur if he can
Wait.
wait a few minutes. So you can come and then he can drive over because it's a small bus. Not a lot of people come on it. So the one that was probably willing to do it. And I said yes, and I was like, okay, yeah.
Yes.
So I had to wait again, and at a certain point, the feeling of dread became more and more and more and more and more, and I didn't know where it came from. But at a certain point, I was like, okay, I really don't want to go. And like, God, please, if you really don't want me to go, let it know. And with like, I was sitting on a bench and I was praying like this, like, please, God. And with that, I look up to the side and I see Intercity canceled. Thank you, thank you. So I go home, very happy I don't have to go. Call my friend. And it sounds really weird, but at that point I was really happy to see my sister for some reason. But then the next day at school, it's like, okay, then bring your stuff to school. Then we go directly from there. And for some reason, I really didn't want to, I felt like betraying my friend for not going. So I went the day after. Immediately with him, after school, we went to him. And basically, he had cooked this big piece of salmon, which was really good. But because of what I had, like the feelings I had yesterday, I was looking. So I saw him, I wanted him to basically do everything first or take the first bite.
To be sure that it was not poison.
So terrible. I felt so terrible afterwards because of really good salmon and like. But I don't know. Like I was sitting there. Eventually, I had great talks, great evening, good salmon. Guy can cook deliciously. But for some reason, there was something in me that said something ain't right in this house.
Oh my God.
And I can remember that I went to the bathtub and I was sitting in the bathtub and it was just quiet, like too quiet. And I was like, that idea that like you're being watched.
Oh my God.
Like, but seriously, like I was sitting in the bathtub and I can remember that I was lying there and I was looking at the mirror and looking back, looking at the mirror, looking back. And one of the things that I noticed is I heard this bird basically chirp because I had a little window that could be open and it's near it's basically at the edge of a village, so near a little bit forested area. And at a certain point I was in this bathtub and it's like someone is watching me, and with that I said that the bird stopped chirping and everything. I'm like, fuck.
Oh, no. I'm getting super stressed here.
So that was the first encounter. But here's the thing. I thought to myself, it is nothing. I went out of the bathtub. I went to bed and I actually slept like a baby. I had no issues in my room. Decent. Man, the next day I was like, I just let it wander. It's like, it's just a feeling. It's nothing. Just let it go.
It is not like a survival instinct or anything.
That was actually survival instinct. I was just very delusional at that point. And I can remember that. Okay, the Friday. That's why there was an entire day that I was there that there was nothing. And that had to be the Friday. So yes, it was Wednesday, then the Thursday that I went, and then the Friday I was basically was there all day and it was fine. It was decent, nothing. And then the Saturday comes rolling around. Lovely breakfast and everything. This is the moment shit goes into overdrive. I have this amazing evening, so we had Lord's Day dinner. That's the dinner here from the student chaplaincy. It's like
for anybody interested.
very interested. And there was a girl that I liked.
Okay.
And let's say I had a nice evening with her, talking and walking and all these things. Sally never turned out into anything.
Nice memory.
Nice memory to have. Up until I took the train and went to his house. So it was summer. Up, this is decently north in the Netherlands, so the sun is up for a long time.
Yeah, until like 11.
And at that time, it was like 22:30 and it was dark. It was like just dark for like 15 minutes. And I enter, and just to give you a layout of the house. So you basically have on one side, you had the hallway, a little stairs above to his room, bathroom with shower and everything. Here you would have my room, and on the other side you have a kitchen, a living room, and then from both the kitchen and living room you basically have an envelope. So it's basically an entrance without a door
Okay. Okay.
into what we call a serre, which was basically a back room, but they were using it as a living room.
I don't like that concept.
It was an old. Here's the thing. This is very old. I think one of the walls, if I remember correctly, he said, are over 900 years old.
Okay.
So it's really, really old. Really old. So everything was dark, but at the background, this old classical music was playing.
No, no, no.
I'm not lying. Old classical music, and I started to scream the name. Let's call him James. His name is not James, but I was like, just if his name is James, I was screaming, James, James.
Your friend.
My friend's name, and I was like very audible. Like at a certain point, I think I screamed really throughout the house. And I started to first go to my room, bathroom, his room, and everywhere I just flickered on the lights. So I was like, no, I don't have this. At a certain point, I go into the kitchen. Have you ever pissed off your mom so much that you just feel her eyes burnt in your neck, and you just turn around and you see your mom just looking angry at her, like, when we're private, you're
gonna die.
So that feeling came from the back room, this intense stare, like, okay, we're not gonna do this. I flickered on the light, and I first went to the living room, and in the living room, also noticed that the classical music came from the back room.
No.
Yeah, it came from the back room. So I flicker on the light there.
I don't know how you dared. No.
I flickered on the light there, and then all this time I was still screaming James, or the real name, at the top of my lungs. And I was looking, and I was thought to myself, okay, I need to go into this back room, because what if something happened? I don't want my friend to be there and die. And I run in, and I just see him. So basically, there you had all these windows around. And one of the windows was open, and he was sitting there, like wiggling like this. Yeah, I'm not lying. Like just wiggling like this. And I was again calling him, like again at the top of my lungs.
But
Like
he was not listening.
he was not listening. He was not there. And at a certain point, come very close, and I basically tap his shoulder. And he turns around with like a dead stare, like the 1,000-yard stare. Have you seen these photos of these World War One shell shock people? Like that stare.
Okay.
Looked at me for I think 2 seconds, and then he just wiggles his head a few minutes, and he's like, Dion, why didn't you call me? I was like, what? And then I was asking what was happening. He's like, oh, I sometimes have these moments where I just enjoy listening to classic music.
Enjoy.
And I said, okay, do you need to do that in the dark? He's like, well, I like the ambience. I might have, because granted, his excuse was also from, well, I'm listening for more than an hour, and I didn't notice maybe that because he started when it was still light out, and he just got lost in the music, as he said it, and forgot to put on the lights. At that point, I still believed him, because he had sometimes his unique side, so to speak.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, man. So we went to the living room where there was the fireplace. For some reason, everyone still says to me, you're a very good friend. I had left. I packed my bags and went. Everyone was saying to me, I don't know why you stayed. But I stayed. I still stayed the night. So we sat at the fireplace. It was like 23:30. We were sitting at the fireplace, and everything was good again. We had a fun talk. At a certain point, he says to me, yeah, I'm gonna prepare for bed. So he was going to the bathroom, wash himself and put himself in his PJs. And then he explained to me how to basically put out
The fireplace.
the fireplace.
It was cold, like winter.
No, it wasn't cold inside, but just for the
It was
ambience.
summer, yeah.
Just for the ambience.
Yeah, because it was summer, no?
And just to give you an idea, so my chair was here, the fireplace was there, and there was the open door to the back room. And he walks away, and like exactly at midnight, I'm not making this up. Exactly at midnight, I was scrolling Twitter,
Okay. As you do.
as you do, enjoying the warmth of the fireplace, and I just exactly at midnight, and I hear the phone ring from the back room.
No.
So I go to the phone, look at it, and I see private number.
Hello.
I'm not picking up. I went to my friends, and it's like, someone is calling you in the dead of night. Yeah, I'm gonna call him tomorrow then. I'm not gonna pick up. Fool. So my friend James continues doing some of his routines. I think,
Skincare routine.
nah, not like that. I think he started to work at school, and I still was at the fireplace.
Okay.
And I kept on scrolling at Twitter. Scrolling and just having laughs at memes, I'm not gonna lie. And this is the moment, this is the most scariest part. The feeling of dread came back and being stared at came back.
No.
But really, really intense. And I can remember sitting at the chair looking at the fireplace. So if I have to take the phone, I could just see, like, here, I could just see the entrance. And because it was
The back room.
of the background, it was a near full moon. It was not a full moon, but nearly full.
Okay.
So you had this very dark blue ambience that I could see.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there, and the feeling of dread got worse and worse. And I was like, okay, just try to shake it off, just ignore it. And at a certain point, I just see like something black at the corner of my eye, and I just freeze, and I just take my phone. I still don't know how I managed to do it, because I'm normally very active and I usually want to look, but I said to myself, okay, don't look, don't look, don't look. And I went away, and then a few minutes later it came back. And I went away and came back. And away and came back. I was sitting there. I'm genuinely, I think the fourth time, like, the feeling was so intense that I was about to shit my pants. I'm not gonna lie. I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. I genuinely, I was like frozen stuck in that chair. And then I saw him a fifth time. And after that, I was like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen, but I am going to move right now away from the living room, away from at least the back room as far as I can.
Yeah. I'm gonna sleep with my friend.
So I quickly, in the meantime, I basically ensure that the fireplace, that there cannot be a fire in the house. I leave the living room on. I leave the the living room lights on. I let the living room door open. And immediately go to the kitchen door. I grab the kitchen door and I put it like here. I quickly flicker the light and close it. And I can just see, like, in that second, so it's like, here's the window, and I just can see again, like, it was dark blue, black again, like the thing was on the other side of the door. I don't look at it. I just continue walking.
I would be like praying so hard, like holding to my Mary image here, like this.
I still don't know why, because I'm so active. I usually would look, but I didn't. And I eventually go to my room, close the door. I thought to myself, there's one of the few times that I thought to myself, I still need to brush my teeth, but fuck that. I just hold on to my rosary. I always have my rosary with me. I just held it on very tight, did a prayer, and after that, the feeling lifted. I started to go to bed, close the door, actually locked the door. And I had to say, in the room, the feeling was alright.
Okay.
Started to drift away into sleep. And eventually I hear my friend, he has a desk and he's basically above me.
Okay.
And I just can hear his chair going to the back.
Okay.
And he gets up to go to to bed as well. And I can literally hear, because it's a very old floor. So the moment he gets into bed, you can just hear the planks a bit squeaking. Yeah. I say, okay, he's into bed. And I turn around, and then a few seconds later on my door I hear, I'm not lying.
I'm gonna cry.
I almost pissed myself.
Like, literally.
I almost pissed myself. When I heard that, I was like, get away, please. Oh, I felt... That was still one of the most scariest things I ever had.
Then you opened the door. Yes.
No, I opened the door. I fell asleep.
I don't know how.
I fell asleep. I stayed there and I fell asleep for some reason. The next day I got up. And for some reason, after all of that, I still wanted to give my friend a chance.
No.
So I get ready and dressed because I need to work. And then I have basically a dinner. I had a dinner with another friend called Dinesh. And I can see, so what happens is, so you're at the bathroom, and I was like, the bathroom door is here. He's standing here, my friend James, and I'm standing here.
In the bathroom.
Now outside, in front of the bathroom door. And the bathroom door, out of nothing, basically closes out of itself almost. Very slowly, like. And my friend just grabs the door, opens it fully, screams, if you want to be inside in private, you just have to close the door faster. And then he just closes the door.
To the thing.
Yeah, and then I look him in the eye and I'm like, what? And he's like, oh yeah, talking to the ghost man. And I'm like,
How nice. How lovely. The ghost man. Yeah, no.
I needed to hear that. I really needed to hear that to think, okay, there's something here.
And you know it.
And you know it. So I left. I genuinely left. And I thought to myself, because all my stuff and so on was there. To basically crash for a week.
Keep it. I don't need it. It's yours now.
And I was sitting there at dinner and I'd promised.
For dinner?
No. Eventually I go work, and then I have dinner with my other friend Dinesh.
Okay.
And I was talking about his experiences against Dinesh, and I was like really distraught. And he could see it. And it took him literally eventually stopping me and telling me, please stop going. You're sweating bullets here of going back. You're so scared to go back. Don't go, stay. Stay, go back home, don't go back. He really needed to say it to me because I just wanted to go back. Just out of loyalty to my friend, I wanted to go back. And he's saying that, so eventually I called my mom and I'm like, Mom, do you mind if I use you in a sweet little lie so I don't have to go back to that place? And ironically, my mom didn't know. So I told my mom, but I only told my mom snippets.
Okay.
Because ironically, this story came up very recently at dinner again when I was eating at her place, and she never knew the full extent. She was like, oh, I didn't know you witnessed all of that. I thought you just had an idea someone was watching you. But she was like, yeah, okay, fine. You can just use me as an excuse. So I told my friend, I said, okay, my mom has some heart problems. I'm going to stay with my mom for a few days, yada, yada, yada. Eventually, everything surrounding that week broke down. Around the same time, he had a victory as well, because he ended up, the James I'm talking about ended up getting a girlfriend that he was really liking.
Okay.
So because of that, we basically lost contact.
Okay.
And I think only 3 or 4 weeks later, I ended up picking up my stuff with Davey. So basically a friend with us in the community. And I can remember that I told Davey everything. And I can remember that Davey got out of the car and was like, yo, Davey, because it was like raining a little bit. And it was like, James was like, yo, Davey, come in. And then Davey's like, nah, I'm good.
Better not.
I went in. That's the last time I was in town. I was like like to my room. I dropped everything in it. Literally zipped it shut, dragged it out. Like I was in there for 2 minutes. And then I actually went to the auxiliary bishop to talk if I had some spiritual residue that I needed to be cleansed of.
Yeah.
And
To get an exorcism.
and then it took another month before I told him. And he told me to my face, okay, yeah, there is something at my house, but I experienced it positive. I've never... And I just looked at him as like,
That's
yeah,
a way to see it.
you can experience it positive. What I experienced was not positive, was not wholesome, okay? So yeah, it's still, that's the scariest thing up till this day that I ever witnessed.
That's the scariest thing I have listened somebody say.
Yeah?
Oh my
I
God.
have to say that happening, after that happening, I started to see, because I used to watch a lot of horror movies and listen to scary stories. I can remember when I was a teen, I listened to a lot of Lazy Masquerade.
Okay.
There used to be a YouTuber, and then from Reddit or Tumblr or other places, you would get these very scary stories that he would narrate
Yeah.
in an interesting way. And a lot of these stories I started to think back to these horror movies that I saw, and I started to look at it differently because I had witnessed that. And I always say, I think a lot of people really can grow in their faith if they witness something like that. I mean, like, if you notice that the devil and its minions are not some philosophical concept, but are real entities, it makes also Jesus that more real. It made Jesus from that point onward so much more real for me. Well, there's one story from Lazy Masquerade that eventually that around the time that it was happening, I always had to thought back to, because ironically, when I was listening to the story, I think I was 18 or 19, and I was like, yeah, this is the biggest Christian bull that I've ever heard. And this was about a man somewhere in Idaho or Arkansas, or, one of these very sparsely populated states.
Yeah.
And he talks about a story that he was driving through a field. He was driving and driving and driving and driving. And I think, if I remember correctly, he talked about having a crucifix, around the, what you call this window in the car?
Yeah, the rear view mirror.
Rear view mirror. Like he had a crucifix around it. And he was like driving through this very big field, basically acres for miles and miles to come. And he's basically sitting. At a certain point, this is the story that I heard 10 years ago, narrated by Lazy Masquerade. I've never found the video again.
This is not a sponsor for Lazy Masquerade, eh?
And at a certain point, he sees some white entity. And how he describes it's basically like something that is all deformed. Like, what's a good... For people who have seen, I forgot the name of the horror movie, but that's the horror movie where you have this very scary girl that's basically very contorted and deformed with her arms and so forth.
Like The Ring.
Something like that.
Or The Exorcist, maybe that goes
like he described it in that manner, but like having like 3 legs, bundled in each other and whatnot. And it was like it was stepping really slowly across the field, but at the same time it was really fast as well. So he was making a step, but for some reason as he was making the step, that entity, it moved really fast across that field. And he was sitting in his car and he was simply looking at it. It's like, I've never ever seen this in my life.
It must be a nice animal.
No, he was dumbfounded. He literally was doubting his own ability to see at that point. Like, am I really seeing this? And with that he's driving, he keeps on looking, and at a certain point he realizes, oh, it's not going to pass in front of me or behind me, it's going to be on a collision course with me. This thing is on a trajectory on hitting me. And he couldn't stop driving. He kept on driving and driving. Matter of fact, he thought, okay, I'm going to pick up the pace. And then that thing went faster. And then he slowed down and that thing went slower. So it was a trajectory course. And with the moment that he actually had made peace, okay, I'm going to be hit by this thing was gone. So he eventually went to the nearest stop and he went for a beer. And then he basically says, that's why I'm typing this on Reddit. And he very distinctly ended it. I knew exactly what this was. That was a demon. Like, that was his end. That was the end. And that stuck with me.
Oh my god.
Every time I think back to what happened to me, that's the story that sticks out. It's some random story that's 9-10 years ago, and that's the one that continuously comes back. Yeah.
And do you still watch scary movies and stuff, or not anymore?
No. I have like... So the parents of my best friend. Oh man. Right throat, sorry.
No, don't worry. Well, the lovely bells of San Sebastian.
If the parents of my best friend, or at least the mom and the stepdad, they often watch some scary movies from time to time. And when I enter, I could remember that they were watching The Conjuring.
I know.
And I can remember that it got so scary that, so basically you have the TV here is a couch, and here is a couch. So you have, and I start at the couch, so you have here the television, couch, and they were sitting here, the parents, and I was sitting here. Mm-hmm. And I was with my head here, and I turned my head here and started to lay down, put on my headphones, and just started to listen to music. I was like, yeah, no, I'm
not doing this.
Not anymore.
No, I used to watch a lot of scary movies when I was younger. And I think the worst, like the most traumatizing one was like this one, what's the name? Hereditary. After that day, I decided never again. Never again. Like, I have never experienced such a big fear, because it is something so human at the same time. Like, I don't know if you saw it, hopefully not.
No.
But it's terrible because it's like people that, like, what I understood, I could be wrong, to the people listening to it that have a different opinion, but to me it was like literally people that got so obsessed with richness, with money, with possessions, with power, that they like sold their soul to a particular like demon that could give them all these things, you know, and it is super horrible. And to me, like it's literally horrible. Some very traumatizing, like scenes that I still have in my mind. And after that day, I remember like I watched it with some friends during like COVID, so we were watching it in Zoom, and like I was so scared, like for a whole week I had to sleep with my sister because I was literally terrified. And after that day it was like no, no, this is like something, because sometimes you see movies and you think like, ah, that's stupid, you know, like that's not gonna happen, you know, like when it's about monsters and stuff. But then you see these, that it's something that literally could be like the person living next to me could be doing that. And that's when I like literally was like, I need to stop doing this, because I could also notice myself having such big anxiety.
I always think back. Padre Pio said one of the biggest traps Satan has is to let you be fearful. Fear is a very good gateway for them. Um, but also, what I also notice about a lot of horror movies, the ones that I'm looking back. So, The Conjuring, the name of the demon is called the Vakal. That is not some random, strangely thought of name. That is an actual noted demon that exists.
Okay.
So I'm not going to call the name anymore. I don't want to.
Mary is here with us. Mary is here with us.
But one of the okay. So my atheist friend, the good friend that I also had that encounter with at the apartment building.
Yeah.
Let's give him a name.
Not James.
I'm gonna call him Rudy. So it's not his real name, but Rudy. Rudy, my atheist friend, very recently started to watch Has-Been Hotel and Hell of a Bus. These are two series that are actually like a bit like Family Guy, a bit like South Parky, you know.
Ah, yeah.
But they're centered around hell. So they're demons in hell.
Yeah, yeah.
So, for example, the main.
Ah, this one of the hotel, no? Yeah, I have heard about that one.
So in Hell of a Bus, like the main protagonists are three imps, which are literal creatures from hell, and a hellhound. That are like the protagonists. And the fifth character is an owl called Stolas. Stolas is again the actual name of an actual demon.
Okay.
So I was watching this series, and there is this one episode. So basically, we're often gaming together, and on the background, because he's autistic, he puts on this series. And sometimes, because in this game you sometimes have long waiting periods, so he was basically spinning that. So like my friend Rudy has like two monitors and a big monitor. And on one monitor he games.
So super gamer.
Yeah, super gamer. And on the other one he basically like the upper one he has Discord, and here he basically has Hell of a Bus playing in the background, so he has background noise.
Okay.
And I'm sitting at a couch, so basically Rudy would be sitting here, and I'm like sitting here, so I can sometimes look and listen to what the series is about. And there's this one scene where they're at like basically a cartoon knockoff of the CIA,
Okay.
some paranormal division, and there are two agents. And at one point, like these three imps and this hellhound, they're stuck on Earth. They manage to get through a portal to Earth, and they're stuck there. And Stolas, this actual demon, which is some gay owl in that series, but
It always has to be gay.
always have to be gay, ends up needing to come and save them. And one of the things that happens is you see one of these two CIA agents is being possessed, and then this Stolas comes literally out of this man's body. And one of the things that I noticed is before that happened, around him was a sigil, like a mark, a very, very constructive sigil. Ironically, then to go back to history, and I was talking about studying, one of the things that the Catholic Church gets a lot of flack for is witch burnings.
Which?
Witch
burnings, yeah.
In the 14th and 15th century. But one thing that is never discussed, if you're going to look this up, They always make it like, oh, these were some innocent females of medicine.
Yeah.
That's not true. So I'm gonna zoom out. So keep in mind, the sigil, hell of a buzz. I'm gonna explain that, but there's a lot of background here. If you zoom out, in the 12th and 13th century, there was let me even go further back. Sorry, guys. When the Romans believed in alchemy.
Yeah.
Alchemy is not some predecessor of chemistry. I've studied enough chemistry to say that very clearly. It's not some predecessor of chemistry. Alchemy is basically there is some chemistry to it. But at the same time, there's a lot of magic and superstition to it. What happened is the Roman Empire fell. And one of the biggest things that makes alchemy is basically they believe that you can turn every metal, everything on this planet into gold, based on some very philosophical matter. They also believe, for example, people that are familiar with Harry Potter, you have the Philosopher's Stone. That is also something that you can make through alchemy. Eventually, you get the Islamic Golden Age. So in the Middle East, a lot of Muslims, they start to expand on alchemy. As a byproduct, they do great things. So they refine distillation.
Okay.
They also, or what was it called again? There are several substances that they ended up making. Oh, they also defined, it's a Muslim that defined alkaline and base, or what's called alkaline and acid. Yeah. But that was all a side product. These Muslims, they were not really Muslims. They were actually occult practitioners.
Okay.
What happened with it is that in the Middle East, Muslims, but more predominantly Jews, and that's very important to understand here, Jews were practicing these occult practices. What eventually happens is you have Al-Andalus, Muslim Spain.
Yeah.
And you get two successive dynasties, the Almoravids and the Almohads, and they start to persecute Christians and Jews heavily. Mm-hmm. And all these Jews, they move to northern Spain. And these Jews, among them are then these practitioners of occult practices. And they start to write down these books. And what happens is they create, so around the 12th, 13th century, when education is very streamlined in Europe again, you have a lot of Jews who eventually starts to teach these alchemy to a lot of these Christians. Mm-hmm. And now you have a whole community of Christians who in the 14th and 15th century, they basically start to practice it also more and more.
Okay.
And they end up having a lot of books. The reason that Christians studied this, the same reason a lot of Jews studied it, was because there was a lot of medicinal benefits to it.
Okay.
That's also where the lie comes from. Well, it was just medicinal, that's true. Mm-hmm. A lot of these had apothecaries and they were indeed selling medicine. They were indeed offering certain therapeutics. Mm-hmm. But they were also practicing, a lot of them, these more darker aspects. They believed in magic, but they also believed, ironically, this is very important to understand, they believed that they could control demons.
Okay.
And one of the most famous books is written down is the Ars Goetia. And this is a book that basically talks about 70 demons. And with these demons comes a sigil.
Okay.
And if you make that sigil based on their rank, so you have princes, you have princes, kings, princes, and barons, I think. I don't know. They had at least 3 ranks. The lowest, you needed to make the sigil with bronze. The middle, you needed to make the sigil with silver. The highest, you need to make the sigil with gold. And as long as you wear that sigil, you are basically the master, and the demon is your slave, and you can kind of control the demon. That's literally what the book teaches. Mm-hmm. It's this knowledge that a lot of these witches, but also a lot of men, a lot of wizards was basically using. And then I'm taking a very small chunk out of it because there's a lot more to it, a lot more. But the Ars Goetia is a very good summary because the name Vakal, from the demon of the conjuring, comes from the Ars Goetia. The name Stolas comes from the Ars Goetia. They're genuine demons that are named in that book. Mm-hmm. And then I look back at the series, that sigil, the one-on-one sigil that comes from that book. But if you then go look at The Conjuring, if you have the balls to watch it again,
no,
you will find that exact sigil that belongs Tuvakal. You will find that in the film. You will find that in the videos, in the movies. They're using real demonic symbols in these movies. And that is the moment I noticed that was for me. That was for me so scary. That's the scariest thing of them all.
It is.
And there's also with Harry Potter, for example. A lot of spells that they're using, we say it jokingly, that are actual spells. That are actual spells from these books that 13th, 14th, 15th century occultists believed in.
Okay.
And yeah, I think I'm gonna stop now because you're really, really scared.
A little bit. I'm just thinking about going back to my house tonight, and I think maybe I want to not sleep today. Maybe I want to pray the rosary the whole night.
I can understand that. I'm happy that I'm gonna do the rosary tonight as well.
Yeah.
But
well, going back to the conversion,
yeah,
after all these things in your adolescence, that you did do your first communion, you were very much into like the paranormal, as we mentioned, and you were a hater of
Christianity, yeah.
Christianity. What happened then? You studied history?
Well, studied is a big word. I've done it in my free time,
Okay.
but really in depth. So I would be, as I said, start with videos on Wikipedia's. From there, I jump to actual writers, actual experts on the field, read their books. And from their books, I go to ground sources, and then thankfully, the internet is very navigationable. Is the right word? At least I can find my way very easy to some of the ground sources. So I, for example, have read Gesta Francorum. I've read the 5 letters of Hernan Cortés that he wrote himself. I've read the 59, the 95 points. That's it, not the 59. The 95 points of Martin Luther that he basically hammered on the Cathedral of Wittenberg, and so forth. That's where my historical knowledge comes from. I have no certificate. You don't have to believe me. You can just think I'm making up wacky nonsense. But that's how I get most of that knowledge.
Okay.
And in studying that, I ended up studying in depth how the West came to be the center stage of the world, basically. And one of the issues that I had, which kept me away from God, ironically, is this very liberal viewpoint that the West is this curse upon humanity. That it, went to the America, genocided everyone, went to Africa, exploited everyone, killed so many innocent people in the Islamic world, went to India, starved everyone. For what it's worth, I think this is a very big exaggeration of events. I'm not going to say no crimes happened before people are going to put that there are definitely some terrible things done, but that's, in hindsight, that's what a lot of empires have done. If you're gonna look, it's quite an irony. It's like I became so anti-Western, and then eventually I flocked to, because I really was in investigating with a love-hate relationship the Islamic Golden Age. And I was looking into Islamic empires, and I quickly came to the conclusion that they had done some very terrible stuff as well. For example, the Almohads Almoravids that I was talking about earlier that were persecuting Jews and Christians, they ended up killing practically all Christians in the Maghreb. The Almohads, the Almohadiyun, was a movement, and there was, if I'm correct, a sultan who believed that he was the Mahdi, and he ended up saying that's an important figure for their end times. Yeah, I think the sultan's name was Ibn Yusuf, but it could be that I'm mistaken. But at least it was the one that eventually said, okay, the Christians and the Jews had their time. Now they need to convert, and it's basically convert or die. And they went to Fez and Marrakesh and Tetuan, Al Hoceima, Oran, basically all these very big cities. And they basically gave the Jews and the Christians there two options. You either convert right on the spot, you say a shahada, you become a Muslim, or we cut your head off. So that's the same, I can go to the Ottoman Empire or I can go to the Mughals. They all have these episodes. So, and it's the same even if you go to African empires, or if you're going to look at the Aztecs.
Yeah.
They all did brutal things. So at a certain point, I'm like, okay, so massacres, genocide, slavery, all these things. Okay, it seems all empires, not only the European ones, were doing that. The second thing that broke me loose from this very anti-Christian mindset and this very anti-Western mindset is also that, okay, if every empire is doing these terrible things, what are the empires bringing to the table in terms of good?
Okay.
I mean, progress, we have progressed. What you see is that the West was very, even among the Catholic Church, was very scientifically inclined.
Okay.
This idea that science and church were at odds, I needed to let go because because here was basically the paradox that I was sitting with. You have a church that's anti-science, or you had Christianity that's anti-science, but at the same time, the West is the biggest catalyst of science in the world, specifically from the Renaissance onward up until even, I would say, World War II.
I mean, all the universities.
We're Catholic.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, for example, I studied in a very particular university in Belgium, which now is no longer Catholic, but like in its origin it was Catholic, and now they are like, ah, yeah, no more, but thank you to the church, we remain good friends, but not anymore. And it's like, bro, you are what you are because of the church, you know?
And I had a very late, that conclusion came very late. I would say around the time that I was actually converting. So now I had to let this idea go that the West, like a lot of things thrown at the West, are very insincere and are very all often hypocritical. So I know Muslims. To give an example, I used to have an Algerian friend that I was talking with a lot. And as hard as he is like, look what the French did to us. And there are a lot of terrible things that the French did. I'm definitely not going to defend that. But at the same time, he takes a lot of pride in the fact that he was raiding the French coast, Spanish coast of slaves. You know, even the Netherlands was attacked by these corsairs, by these Algerian pirates. And he takes great pride in that. Like, so at one time, you're basically against what the French did, but when your people come to Europe, you take pride in that. I think that's hypocritical. And he comes with these arguments that basically states, well, it's not hypocritical, really. I mean, it's different. I'm like, it's not different. I don't think it's different. If you come to other people's places with a very superiority complex and take over or try to take over, else tries to raid what they have, I think that is pretty terrible. It's the same what I had with people from India. It's the same what I had with people who are very defending of the native cultures of America. And I'm not going to say, for example, I'm not going to say that the Aztecs were some when it comes to science or when it comes to technology that they weren't very innovative, or that they were actually dumb and superstitious. And there was also a lot of aspects about Mayan society or about Inca society or about Aztec society that was very progressive for its time period. If I would ask the question now, do you really want the Aztecs to have won and today's Mexico to be believing in their doomsday cult and basically practicing human sacrifice? Did you want Hernan Cortez to win and bring you Christ? I'm sorry, at the end, my answer is going to be I'd rather have Christ and no human sacrifice. Does that mean that everything the Spanish did at that moment or everything thereafter is good? No, but I want to make this argument that sometimes you should look at the end result, not necessarily at all the deeds, but at the end result. And I think when it comes to the march of civilization as a whole, worldwide, we should be happy with the end results. And I often tell myself, I think the West, for all its bads, has brought the world so much further. And I think also in terms of how we treat each other, the concept of human rights, the sense of human dignity. And here comes the thing. If you accept, okay, the West has indeed brought a lot of progress to the world, you also come to this point. It's like, is it despite or because of Christianity? And they want to make it despite, but if it's going to be despite, then, well, very simple. The church had all this power in medieval Europe and Renaissance Europe, and church institutes, if I can say, are the center points where an intellectual tradition was upkept and expanded upon. How are you going to say that, like, let's take a look at genetics comes from Joseph Mendel, a monk. The Big Bang Theory comes from a priest called Lemaitre.
Yeah.
The modern scientific method was was made by a bishop called Robert Grosseteste and I forgot the name. Bacon. No, Bacon.
Francis Bacon?
Francis Bacon, yeah. They developed all of that. And all of them are Catholics. If you're going to look at Copernicus, he was a priest. And he came with heliocentrism. Galileo Galilei, when he was basically condemned by the church, he was condemned for its ample proofs of heliocentrism. And one of the things that he ended up doing is like he didn't go against history. He said, okay, or didn't go against church teaching. He tried to say, what I'm saying is definitely in line with church teaching. That's what he did up till the last breath. He was trying to prove that his findings were in line with church teaching. This is the story. It's like, okay, every time I find people that are very much motivated by Christianity to prove how the world works, and in many, many occasions the church embraces it. I mean, if you're going to look at it, the church has embraced evolution as a real proven thing. The church has embraced genetics as a real proven thing. Heliocentrism as a real proven thing. So many more things that, okay, this is how the world works, but how does this affect Scripture? Does it affect Scripture? Is Scripture contradictory to this? And I think that also proves for me how infallible the church is to me, because I don't think the tradition, so the tradition of the church, has ever said anything at odds with scientific progress. It's one of the reasons I'm now Catholic. And when I accepted that, it's like, okay, the church is behind a lot of progress, and the end result of Christian societies is this modern world. What is the actual complaint here? And then I realized two things that are very important. The first thing, if I'm going to look at other societies, they talk really, like they really elevate their ancestors and their history. They're really ignorant of all the wrongs that they did, to a point that they deny it, sugarcoat it, or straight up defend it as something that needed to happen. And their societies are far, far from as far developed as the West is. And the second thing, the West is the only civilization that is so critical of its own actions. If you're going to look at, come with an example, even up till today, if you're going to sit with Turks and talk about the crimes of the Ottoman Empire, most Turks cannot even name one thing. For them, the Ottoman Empire was one of the greatest things ever. If you're going to sit with the Japanese and talk about what they did in World War II, nothing. We were stopping Western imperialism. If you go to China, China will say, well, they massacred 20 million of us, mostly civilians. And that's the course everywhere. It's like the moment I ask other peoples and their civilizations, if you want to call it otherness, they don't have that criticism that the West has.
Okay.
It's the same with this Algerian friend that talks about slavery. I'm like, but slavery is bad, right? I mean, you complain about slavery in the Americas. Like, yeah, but you did that too. Well, that's different. That's stewardship. We treated them like family. I'm like, I went as far to basically take this antebellum, no, postbellum, South script from a Confederate that actually fought for the statute of slavery, for the right to own slaves. You can there are several Muslims that I sadly talk with that end up being very defensive about the slavery that they committed to. You can literally take all the arguments Confederates would make why they fought for slavery. Oh, they were like family. Oh, these black slaves, we treated them very kindly. That's all abolitionist propaganda. They had a very decent living with us, if they sang, they were happy. It's like all these arguments, and you can literally go to a Muslim. He will make the same, or Muslim is a big word. Let's say a Muslim that is defending its slave trade. Those Muslims defending its slave trade, they will make all these arguments, like mirror image to what the Confederates were saying right after their slaves were taken from them. And then in the West, we're very critical at the Confederates, rightfully so. But at the same time, and specifically my experiences with liberals in academic circles, and then I mostly look at the University of Amsterdam, I'm sorry, the University of Utrecht, I'm sorry, what I've seen coming from there is very defensive of that slave trade. And a lot of historians that practically go along with that Islamic narrative that slavery was like stewardship and they were treated like treated like family. I'm like, no criticism at all. And I think that's why they stopped, that's why one of the reasons why their Islamic golden age stopped, because they stopped being self-critical. And that's the same for, if I'm going to look at India, and it's the same for China, it's the same for Japan. The West is very unique in its ability to say, okay, we've done wrong things and we need to change. And that's basically also where this liberal mindset comes from. These liberals, somewhere down the line, they were convinced that the Western civilization, because it's so self-critical, it can very quickly, on a moral note, but also when it comes to technology or philosophy, change its attitude, so to speak, which makes them very capable, very adaptive, and that also is due in part why the March of Progress went so explosively good in the West. And somewhere down the line, these liberals are convinced that the West can be basically a scapegoat for the world's problems. To a point, they're going to cater to the arrogance of other peoples. So yeah, to summarize it, the fact that we're self-critical, the fact that at the end of the day, the Western world is a product of Christianity, the intellectual tradition that made the entire Western modern world is a product of Christianity. And the most important thing, Christianity gets so much slander and libel against it. And when I realized those four things, that's the moment I kind of turned around and reevaluated my positions, and I grew to actually love Christianity a lot more. Yeah.
Like, how was the process? Like, because now, as you know, the name of the podcast is the carob pit, which is not per se a concept in the Bible, but it's like this moment when the lost son figures out he's willing to eat the carobs the pigs are eating, and then he's like, no, I need to go back to my father's house. Like that moment when you said, like, okay, it is this what I need to do.
And it's actually also supernatural. But it's not it's not a scary story. It's actually, I had a friend who it's called Mitch.
His real name? Her?
His real name, yeah.
Yeah.
And I have another friend who I also gonna give another name. So we had James, we had Rudy or Rudy. I am gonna call him Jacob.
Okay.
Jacob is a friend of mine that is actually the reason he pulled me back to Christianity. Like, he's one of the reasons I started to reevaluate history and all of that. And he had a friend that he knew from work, which was called Mitch. Mitch is very Catholic man. Catholic is a big word in this sense, because he basically believes in the end times, and he doesn't believe that Pope Francis was a legitimate pope. So,
Okay.
but he is a Catholic in the sense that he knows his faith, he knows the sacraments, he knows his Bible. I cannot deny that. And so via Jacob, he became very, very Protestant. Jacob is really anti-Catholic as can be.
Okay.
And
But Christian.
but Christian, and he quickly grew in the Christian faith, mostly as a scare from the Corona crisis.
Okay.
And I quickly came into contact with Mitch, and Mitch started to take me to church for the first time. So somewhere down the line, I think I was just back from Den Bosch, so I was like 22, 23. I was 22. And I started to, for the first time ever, drive to church, go to church again. And every Sunday I would go to Stein, where you have the Bitterlijdenkapel, and I would go there to the Latin Mass, like traditional Trinitarian Latin Mass. And I kept on going there. And at a certain point afterwards, we would always do a rosary. Okay. And this was a really, really, really big rosary. And it took an hour just to finish one entire row of beads. So it's like a lot of prayers in it. And then you had, at a certain point, he gave me a book, which was called Crusader Prayers. So these were prayers. And he said to me, I can remember that very vividly, he said to me, if you go to the 33rd, so that's the age that Christ was when he got crucified. If you go to that prayer, and you pray that prayer with an open heart, you will be touched by Jesus. That were his exact words. And I was like, that's nonsense. I do not believe that.
Okay.
So I took that book and I had this mandje,
Like
basket.
basket, yeah.
I just threw it in there, put it under my television at my room, and didn't look at it for an entire, like, I think 4, 6 months. Couldn't care. At a certain point, I stopped going to the Trinity Mass because I had to get up really early to basically go there. And I started to go, and I always needed to work on Sunday. Didn't honor the Sabbath day at that point. And yeah, I started to go to the church here, Saint Sylvester. And they had the English Mass there, but it was in the evening, so I could go there after work. Um, and I kept on going here, and I would keep on my confession, would keep on going to Limbricht, which is near Stein, near the Bitterlijdenkapel. I kept on going there. And I can remember at a certain point I had a fight with my sister, fight with my mom, um, proms at work, and another fight with Jacob again. Felt very lonely. And also going to church felt like a drag. I really didn't want to go anymore. And I can remember that at a low point, when I was 22, I just grabbed that book. And I thought to myself, well, God, I'm going to give you one last shot unto the 33rd prayer. And I meditated. And I took some breaths in and out very deeply. Tried to get my mind peace. To get to a point I could really, 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 hear my heart beat and feel like, okay. So I read the prayer once. And I started to very word for word trying to memorize the word while listening to my heartbeat to try to say it. Just to give you an idea, up till that point, I had grown up with my father who had problems with alcohol. And as a result of it, I had grew pretty emotionless. So I've had, up till that point, I had 4 funerals. And I didn't cry for one. So for my own grandma, my own grandpa, my own uncle, and the mother of my stepfather, I didn't cry at all. Couldn't care less. No emotions. And the second thing is I was always thinking. My mind is not at rest. It's never at rest. It's always thinking. And at that point, I hadn't cried for over a decade.
Okay.
Not even falling on the ground. Not even falling on the ground. Not even nothing. Nothing in the emotional sense. Nothing in the physical sense that made me cry for over a decade. At that point, when I finished the prayer, I don't even think I finished the prayer. I think I finished like there were 3 parts. I think I just finished the second part. I felt super happy all of a sudden. And it was the first time ever in my life that I cried of happiness, and the first time since 10 years that I was crying, like bawling my eyes out crying. But I was super happy. And my mind just stopped thinking. Just like that. Just like silence. And I kept on crying. It's like, you know that saying that you feel a weight lifted from your shoulders? So with that I was crying, I got up and I just feel a weight lift from my shoulders. It's like, yeah, I think that was the moment I came to conversion. I think I've kept on crying for half an hour. At a certain point I stopped. Yeah, my mind was serene. It was very tranquil. I think I've never seen the world as beautiful as I saw it at that day. And I went to bed, and then I went to church. And I was like, okay, you do exist. I always keep saying at that point I was visited by Jesus. Or at least he came to literally touch my heart with a finger so I could smile again, I could cry again, I could be happy again. And I kept on chasing that feeling. And the first time I found that feeling again is when I had my first confession, like real proper confession. So I was going to confess everything I've done in my life, all the bad things. And I had to prepare for it, so I was writing it down on a paper, all the things I wanted to say, I felt like I needed to say. And we were going to a priest in Sint-Willibord.
Okay.
This is a village all the way in Brabant. And there was a priest that was very good friends with Mitch. Also came from Argentina. And it's a priest that was at the seminary with Pope Francis.
Okay.
So he was at the same time there as Pope Francis. So
Okay.
he knew Pope Francis as Bergoglio, and they were at the same seminary. Well, he became the one that where I went to confess my sins, and I had 3.5 hours, a whole life story. The man got to hear like the worst things I've done, the worst things I've seen, the worst things I've fought. And after that, he asked me, "Do you want to receive the Eucharist? Want to receive the body?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to. I want to." So I went on my knees, gave it, put it like on the tongue, old-fashioned way. And that feeling was there again. I started to be very, very, very happy. I could just retain my tears because I wanted to, not look like a little child in front of my friends. Just retain my happiness, and I was happy. And I can remember that again. Also, the serenity came back, the tranquility. On a trip in the car, my friend started to do a rosary. I wasn't there. I was I was there, but I wasn't there. My head was empty. It's the second time and the third time which sealed my conversion to Catholicism. At that point, I was already very highly likely convinced that the Catholic Church was true, but what really pushed me over the edge to a point that I could never ever doubt it. So that girl from the horror story that Saturday beforehand that I was with. Well, I basically confessed my feelings. Whether or not if that was the right decision, I don't know. I can remember that, of course, she had to say no, but the answer was no. And that really, really hurt me. So, for a week, like it was so intense, I'd issues with my bowel, with my digestion, with my food. I couldn't eat. I couldn't eat anything salty at that point. And after a week, I think I started to do the rosary very, very intensely, like every day, every day, every day. Every day I was praying, and it's like, God, where do you want me? And after a week, I can remember the Sunday. So that same Davy, he was now serving his altar, his acolyte. And he was the only one then it was the St. Matthias. So we moved the English church from here to the St. Matthias. Then it was the St. Matthias. He was an acolyte there. But he was the only one. Most people hadn't shown up. But I had no intent of actually being altar boy, service boy, acolyte at that point. I didn't want anything to do with that. I felt unworthy and, all of that. And I can remember that Lawrence asked me to help him with collecting. So he had to collect money. I was like, I want to do that with someone. So I end up walking into the sacristy for the first time ever. And I see Davy come to me. It's like, I need another acolyte or else I cannot use the incense. And I don't know where it's like, Dion, do you want to be acolyte? And before I could actually overthink it, I say, yes, I want to do that. It's like, just blurt out.
You were already dressed.
And all of a sudden I was dressed and I was like, okay, here we go. I almost cried. Like, the closer we came to the Eucharist, the more that feeling that I had at my room, the more that came back, and once he uplifted the Eucharist, that's the moment I started to cry again. So, yeah, I really started to cry. And then I got the Eucharist again. Same happiness, same tranquility. I ended up drinking coffee there, which I do not remember. Got on the bus, which I do not remember. No, what I do remember on the bus, I started to do a rosary. And then I came home. And I'm pretty sure my neighbors think I'm schizophrenic because I went to the backyard and I started to walk and I just started to pray and talk with God up and about. And I was up until the sun was setting because it was again summer. And that's the moment that, I know, okay, he's really, really real. The Catholic Church is correct and I'm never going to leave this. And then a little bit of a fourth story. which happened even before I went to Den Bosch. So before I even would ever consider Catholicism, I actually have this rosary. And long story short, this rosary I ended up finding in the middle of a road.
Really?
In the middle of a road. And it's like I went home really late at night after a long night of being with people that drink and smoke and do all the things God forbid. And just to give you an idea how weird it was it's basically if you're going to the bridge, and then so not the bridge here, but the bridge more north, the Wilhelmina Bridge.
Ah, yeah, like close to the government.
Close to the Mosaforum. You know the play.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. That bridge, if you cross that, at a certain point, you can go left, basically along a park. And one of the things that I remember is it was like cloudy that day, but there was no lightning or anything. So I come up and I can remember that I look into the street. And before I want to make the turn, so I do check if nobody's coming so I can take the turn. And
Or
right
in
before,
the car.
no, I was on the bike,
Yeah.
but I was looking if no car was coming. So I want to turn the bike. And with that, I turned the bike. For some reason, a lightning strike, I can remember that. Like, I scared. And with that happens, I look on the ground and there's a rosary. This rosary, but I'm still wearing up till this day.
Okay.
I was like, so I stopped. I looked at it for maybe 10 seconds. And then I grabbed it and I put it in my pocket. And I went back to my home. And I would be living with my mom for 3 years. And I basically so you have my bed, and next to it you basically had this little bakje,
Baggy, like box?
like a box. And with it were old books, so my old laptop, and I threw it on top of it, and I didn't look at it anymore. Nothing. And the first time around that I started to take it again is after I came back from Den Bosch, and I started to hang around with Jacob again. At that point, Jacob was like Christian, but he didn't really know if he was going to be Catholic or Protestant or this or that. He's like, oh, you should wear a cross, show it. I'm like, oh, I can check if I have some. So I ended up wearing this. That became my cross, because that's the thing I had for hands.
But now you have another one.
This was the one that I got from Mitch.
Okay.
So I'm gonna explain this later. So I had this cross, and I had this cross, what I thought was a cross, for 2 years. And I started to walk and walk and walk with Jacob. Mostly we do the St. Petersberg. And at a certain point, oh, my friend Mitch is coming along. Never seen Mitch. Mitch comes along and he looks at me and he asks me, are you Catholic? I'm like, yeah, culturally, but I don't really know if I like that church. I can remember that he said that. So we start walking and walking, and at a certain point,
This was before your conversion.
this was before my conversion. This is before everything. It's the first time I probably saw Mitch, or the second time. At a certain point, Mitch asks me, he's like, you know what this is, right? And I'm like, no, I have no clue what this is. I don't know. I was like, yeah, it's a cross. He's like, that's not a cross. I'm going to give you a cross. That's a rosary. I never heard about the rosary. It's like, what's a rosary? And that's when he started to explain about the beads and everything. And then he gave me this. That became my cross then. And I started to wear both because this was simply, when I was coming to faith, pretty quickly I had mostly my non-Christian friends ended up for some reason calling me Jesus
Okay.
because of everything. And yeah, basically this became my look. Just it's like if I had only one cross on, they would ask if I was sick because
Okay.
I needed both. Yeah. So that's how I learned also Mitch, that he was a rosary. I ended up later asking his number and go to church with him. And in that same time, I basically, between Protestantism and because that's Jacob became the Protestant, became the anti-Catholic, even to a point that he said I shouldn't wear a cross at all. So the same man that told me I should wear a cross ended up abandoning the concept of a cross.
Yeah.
And Mitch is the one that became Catholic, and I eventually ended up gravitating towards him.
Okay.
And I've no direct contact anymore with Jacob except for some text messages here and there. Yeah, that's the core of my conversion story. First this, then meeting Mitch, telling me what this is, giving me this. Then the rosary prayers. Then that night I prayed the 33rd prayer. Then the for the first time doing confession and getting a proper Eucharist, and then serving as an altar boy. And now I'm sealed. You never get me away.
Okay. And now you're like officially part of the Maastricht Catholic Student Chaplaincy, or?
I'm not part of it. Yeah, I am. Yes and no. I started to get involved. There was also this moment that I was going to this church here,
San Servas.
St. Savas. So I'm talking again when I was 22. And I basically got a bit disillusioned of continuously going to Spain. And I think I had done that prayer already, so I wouldn't abandon it. The prayer gave me, motivated me to continue going to church. But I really didn't like it that I was alone. Like I felt very lonely. Don't get me wrong, I had a lot of what you could consider friends that I could talk with, but I felt lonely in the sense that it was mostly me listening, them talking, but then talking about, well, I'm not. I've heard stories. I've heard stories. At at a certain point, I can remember the mass that Father John, or Deacon John, or Dean John, the Deke Doutsenberg,
Deacon.
the Deacon Doutsenberg. He said we will need to prevent the selling of the Saint Matthias. And to do that, we're going to move the English Mass from here in the Saint Servas to the Saint Matthias, which I found really, really sad because I think the Saint Servas is the most
Beautiful.
it's absolutely beautiful. But right, it ceased. It ceased. The Mass ceased there. Went there to the Matthias, I think, several times, and at a certain point, because when I was going to here to the Saint Servas, at the evening, every time, Sister Agnes was standing there handing out these leaflets for the chaplaincy. And I can remember one of these leaflets. I just took it, I looked at it, I basically crumbled it and put it in my pocket. I was like, yeah. Like, that's absolutely terrible.
And Sister Agnes, okay. Yeah, why did I print it?
So we moved, and I can remember Sister Caroline seeing her for the first time. It's like, we have coffee and tea for the students. In the back room at the St. Matthias, where.
Yeah.
And some reason for some reason I thought, okay, I need to go there because I actually need to go home and cook, but I go there.
I think that was the first time I saw you.
Yeah, first time you saw me was there. I ended up going, and I stood there, and I ended up looking around, and most of the people there were Spanish. I didn't know anyone. I felt really uncomfortable. I was just standing there, And after 10 minutes, I wanted to leave, but there was something that basically was like, just wait a few more minutes. I was like, I want to leave again after 15 minutes. Wait a few more minutes. And I think after 30 minutes, I ended up meeting Lawrence.
Ah, Lawrence.
He ended up talking with me.
Shout out to Lawrence.
Yeah, Lawrence. Shout out to the man. It's the reason I ended up in the chaplaincy. He started talking with me. And then he called a friend, which Dulce.
Oh, yeah.
Which was also someone really important at chaplaincy. And I think afterwards we had to leave. We went to my stamkroeg, which is basically the bar you usually go to. Took them there. Had an amazing evening there. Then we went to dinner because I hadn't eaten yet. We went to Domino's, talked there, and I think it was like 11 o'clock. And then we went home and I was like, wow. And after that, I don't know if it's Lawrence or Dulce. They invited me for a rosary at the St. Petersburg. And then I met Grant. Shout out to Grant. Not long afterwards, I think it's Grant who for the first time invited me to the Lord's Day dinner. And then, a world opened for me all of a sudden. A Catholic community. So, and from that point, I slowly became more and more and more involved. And I think the tipping point came when we had our first summer vacation, and I was like, okay, I'm not going anywhere, so I can continue the Lord's Day dinner for all the Dutch students that are still in Maastricht. And I think from that point onward, I got very intimately involved, and they entrusted me the keys to the Saint Servas, which the Saint Onze Lieve Vrouwen, not Saint Servas, Onze Lieve Vrouwen. I eventually had to give the keys back, but they really involved me, and I became an MC. So tomorrow, Lord's Day dinner, I'm also going to I call it host. Yeah, and from say it happened very naturally, but I was very happy that I was in the Catholic communities.
So now you're getting your confirmation in 2 days.
Yeah,
Maybe this will be posted after that. So when is the day? On the 18th?
18th.
And what do
That's
you feel? How do you feel?
my entire non-Christian family is going to come.
Okay.
So it's going to be very interesting to see all of them in a church.
Where is it gonna be?
St. Matthias
Okay, in the evening mass.
evening.
Okay, I will be there.
Yeah, you will be there. A lot of people are coming, especially to see my confirmation.
Great.
So then I'm going to be fully Catholic. After 27 years, I'm going to be fully Catholic.
I find it so crazy because my confirmation, like, I did it when I was 18, but I don't think I was like really conscious of what it meant. I was like, ah, yeah, the confirmation, but like I remember it like as a day. And I hear to the people, I listen to the people being super excited for the confirmation, and I'm just like, I don't think I valued and I understood what it meant, no? And that's why I like enjoy going to the confirmations of other people, because it's like I can understand better what I didn't understand at the moment, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's something super deep. It, like as you say, it's you're truly Catholic. Like you're openly saying, I am a soldier of Christ. Like I am here for Christ, and it's something super deep. And like my parents didn't even ask me if I wanted to do it, because in some of the interviews I have done, like they tell me like, ah, yeah, and my parents asked me like, do you want to do the confirmation? And I decided no, or things like that. And I'm like, my parents never asked me. But because in Mexico, maybe it's more like, oh, you need to do it, you know?
You need to.
And also, it's very common, like, oh, you want to get married by the church? Ah, do your confirmation. And it's like, ah, yeah, I'll do it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But I really think it's important to be conscious, like, of what you're doing. It's not just a requisite. And I think in my mind, it was like, ah, yeah, a requisite. Like, my first communion, I was, like, thrilled. And I remember, like, a very big part of me wanting to receive my communion was my dress and my all the gifts that people gave me. Like I still remember the gifts I got.
So you got all these splendorous gifts, and you were like, that's why I did communion.
Yeah, but then like in my confirmation, like my even my who do you say godparents?
Okay.
My godparents of the confirmation, like I don't even think they were like conscious of what it meant.
No.
You know, like
I can relate to it. It was the same with my baptism. We only had to be baptized so I can do communion. And I wanted to do communion because my grandparents really wanted it. And I felt peer pressured because a lot of kids at my school were also doing communion because communion was cool. The only thing that I can remember is that my gift for doing communion was a lifetime subscription to the Donald Duck.
what is the Donald Duck?
The Donald Duck is basically, you have these little comic books
Okay.
with all these Donald Duck stories, and I can remember that was a gift I was given.
Okay.
A lifetime subscription to the Donald Duck.
Nice. So, like to be coming to the end, what is one, I don't know, it can be anything, you know? It can be a verse of the Bible, a particular prayer, a particular song, something that you would recommend people listening to us read, pray with, dive into in their process.
I would say the 33rd prayer. But I have to find that book because I don't know the title from my head. So what would be the second thing? One of the things that I think is really good to read is 1 John, the entire letter. It's not even much. But I think that Bible, that is the summary. And one of the reasons I'm saying it is because 1 John, that letter is a summary of the entire teaching that John of Zebedee, an apostle of Christ, was given by Christ. I also like it because it's the main thing to go to when people's like, okay, give me an eyewitness of Jesus Christ that talks about the Trinity. And I'm like, 1 John, somewhere at the end, he basically says, that's such a cool line. The Father, the Word, and the Spirit uh, testify in heaven, these three are one. It's like such a cool line. Such a cool line. But yeah, I would say that letter. That letter, that is the story of Christ. That is the core of the entire teaching. And this is given to you by John of Zebedee. He wrote that letter on Patmos in his old days. The only man that stood next to the cross when Jesus Christ was dying, the man who had seen him in the flesh, the man that was, laying and resting his head on his chest, the Last Supper. It's this man that wrote that letter.
It's also the who. How does he call himself? Loved
The beloved disciple.
the one that ran faster than Peter,
Yeah.
and also the one that Jesus himself gave as a child to Mary.
Yeah. And the most beautiful part about it is he's the only one that died of old age.
Not a martyr.
Not a martyr, because he, ironically, is also the only one that stayed with him at the cross. And he was the only apostle that was with him when he was like... So when you read the Gospel of John, which is also written by John of Zebedee, that's also the reason it's the most attacked gospel, because like that's not an eyewitness, that's the eyewitness.
Yeah.
Like when he talks about the crucifixion, this comes from someone that like this distance, like here was he, and he could see Jesus up there, like you could hear Jesus. So I always say what John says, the last words, that are probably the last words. I'll say that. When John talks about what happened there at the cross, this coming from someone who saw that. He saw the soldier stab him in the rib, like he was looking at that. He was like a witness to that. When he saw him cry out his last words, when he saw him say, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing, he was hearing. It's like, yeah, John of Zebedee, they really want to make the Gospel of John not coming from John of Zebedee, because when it comes from John of Zebedee, you not only have an eyewitness, but one of the most solid eyewitnesses ever. So I hope I've hyped him enough for the people to actually read John 1 or 1 John.
I'm gonna read it when I get home.
It's a good letter. So that's my tip. 1 John. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. So, very intense episode. It was great. It was really interesting. We had fear, we had laughter, we had also these beautiful, I don't know, like moments that I think many of us have experienced. This moment where you understand that you are being hugged by God and He's telling you, hey, 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 I have always been here, no? And yeah, I want to thank you for opening up here, for being so willing to share your story, willing to share God's grace in your life. I think since I listened to you speak in the Young Professional Dinner, if anybody's interested, we have a group for for young adults in Maastricht, if somebody from Maastricht is listening to us and wants to join us. And I could listen to you speak, and I was just like, I need you in the podcast. And I even told you, and then you texted me like, Stefan told me like, Dion sends you this, and it was like, Chio told me you wanted me in the podcast. When?
Here
And
I
I
am.
was just like, it's the moment. Like, it's the moment, and I am so glad to have you. It's like, I think it's gonna be the longest episode yet. But I think it's completely worth it, and I love these stories because it's God like showing you like I have always been here, and in so many ways. And this how you speak about how He in some way melted your heart that maybe had been like very hardened, and He just like he transforms our hearts. No, I think that is beautiful. And well, is there something else you would like to share with our audience?
Well, one of the things that I found very fascinating if I look back at all other things is that I went from a man that didn't believe in any spiritual world at all to one that I have a lot of encounters now. Like, I have a lot more stories. There's gonna be a second episode because
Of course.
specifically on the paranormal, I have like 8-9 stories that I witnessed.
Maybe we can have it for All Saints Day.
All Saints Day, yeah. No, I've never expected to be so. Let me say, if you told 15-year-old me that I would be one of the most fearful, believing Catholics on this planet. Okay, on this planet is like it's a big self-entitlement here, but no, I'm very, very. I've become very, very Fearful is also not the right word. How can I? This is the moment where I'm falling shut and I don't know the words, but it's basically I've become very, very convinced. Like many people say, "Do you believe in God?" And I always say, "No, I know He exists because they have given me so much evidence. I have so much encounters with Him, but also sadly with the devil and his minions. But most of it happened around 20 and after 20. And before that, I never had any encounter whatsoever. Very sheltered life. That and that thing, that the spiritual world was something that I didn't consider real because there was no proof. And all of a sudden, I get all this proof just pushed in my face. It's like, is this enough proof for you? And
Yeah.
it has made me like a very convinced Catholic. I've had many times that at the end of the day I couldn't deny it anymore. It's like someone would come to me. I've had this question once asked. It's like, could you even could you even say this? When someone puts a gun in front of you and say, okay, really, do you believe in Jesus Christ? You can renounce him now. I probably will be shot. I can't. He came that close to me. Like that close. From one side, that's why I come with fear. I think it's scared. I think there's also moments I'm more scared because now that he's real, now that I know there is a heaven, now that I know there is a hell, now that I know there's Satan and his agents, but now that I know there are angels and there is going to be a father that's going to be the judge of my actions, I started to tread very lightly when I take steps in life. I'm very, very fearful of my actions because, there's always someone watching. There's always someone, that's gonna hold me accountable for every stupid thing I say and do and maybe not do and fail to do. But it's also very beautiful because so many moments, specifically when I pray the rosary, I've had so many stories about the rosary where I pray, pray, and pray, and there are so many coincidences that just cease to be a coincidence. It's like becoming Huisgeluk. I don't know his English name, but it's basically so you have Donald Duck and then you have his nephew that is very lucky always. It's basically no, it's uh, this guy.
Ah, the uncle.
Yeah,
Rich McDuck.
Rich McDuck.
In Spanish is
Gladstone Gander, that's his name.
that one.
That was his name. No, I always in Dutch I always say I sometimes feel like Huisgeluk, which is Gladstone Gander. It's like so many times I've been lucky in life. Even some moments long before it's like last story to finish. It's like cool. It's the coolest story of luck that I have, which I often overthink. So I always say like 14 years ago I should have been dead.
Okay.
Um, I have a scar for the people who cannot.
Here.
Yeah, it's the scar. I basically when I was 13 years old. It's even a very silly thing. It's like I was very angry because I couldn't open the door because it was summer. And my mom has this window. And I just, out of anger, started to, because also I heard my dog bark and he wouldn't stop. And I started to hit harder and harder and harder. And I just hit through the window at a certain point. And I start to bleed like insanely much. And I see, you can see it.
It's big.
It's not only big, but it's also, the saying, sideways for attention, or in so
Yeah.
so I was already looking at it and think, damn,
I'm gonna die.
I'm gonna die. I was screaming and crying, like the entire street probably heard me. I've never screamed for help so loud as I did that day. Um, Eventually a guy in my street brought me to the first aid. Like he turned it around very tight. And eventually they took it away, ended up checking, and like, okay, it's a very big wound, but you can be healed. I was crying and panting all over when I was sitting there, to the point I pissed off the nurse so much that she eventually also was like, "Can you just shut up?" Yeah. And at the end of the day, I can remember that this nurse said very clearly to me, I don't know how, but you have this terrible flesh wound. And it's really terrible. It's going to heal for some time, but you're the first person ever that I've ever witnessed that gets a wound across its wrist, exactly where your artery is. And everything, muscle, other blood vessels, but except that artery is untouched. She could see that artery, like not a scratch, nothing. She said, "You're one in a million.
Okay.
You're one in a million." you should have been dead. That was what she told me. She's very clear that I was that lucky. And given that I had, like, before I came to the hospital, like 15, 16 minutes, she made very clearly you would have bled out. You would have never made it in time. And I was 13 years old.
God wanted you to do some.
And I'm still here, which is yeah, it keeps me up at night. That's one of the few things that keeps me up at night. I was so lucky that day. Yeah.
God's grace, literally.
So read 1 John and yeah, don't be afraid of the spiritual world. Just let it come towards you and let it be proof for how real God is. That are the things I want to say. That's the things I'm going to end it with.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much,
You're
Dion.
welcome.
Congratulations on your confirmation.
I can't wait.
Pray for Dion, for his sanctity, for his vocation. And well, if you want to share your story, don't be afraid to reach out. And if you're in Maastricht, join the Maastricht Student Chaplaincy. If you're a little bit older, the young professionals too. And well, may God bless you all.